Hello and welcome back to Scoop with Coop. I'm of course Coop, and in today's video, we're going to be doing my second NFL mock draft. And I believe it was 2 days after I posted my first one. Dante Moore decides let's go back to college and completely throw off my list and my mock draft. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into it, shall we? Now, nothing changed from the first go around. The first overall pick for the Raiders should be and is probably 99.99999% going to be Fernando Mendoza. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter of, maybe should they trade with the Jets and get value. I'm not buying that hogwash, right? Mendoza is very polished, and I don't think the Raiders would have brought in Kirk Cousins if it wasn't to mentor someone who I think is very similar to Kirk Cousins in Fernando Mendoza. So I think Mendoza, he's going to be the first overall pick by the Raiders. Mendoza is absolutely, I think, pretty pro-ready, calm under pressure, great in the pocket, and willing to do whatever it takes to win. I love that, and I love this pick for the Raiders. They rebuilt their offensive line in free agency. So I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise when Fernando Mendoza's name is the first one called on draft night. Now, for the Jets, there are a couple of ways that this could go, whether or not it's your choice between David Bailey and Arvell Reese. I'm personally more of a Arvell Reese guy, but I do think that the pick is going to end up being David Bailey simply because he has production at the FBS level. I believe he was tied for most with, is it 14 or 15? He had at least 14 sacks on the year, so he's someone who can disrupt the pass rush and get to the quarterback, and that's something that the Jets really need. And I think that right now the best quarterback isn't on the board, and I think you just got to cut your losses and go with a player who fits a need and is definitely a good football player, and that is David Bailey. Now the third pick, this is where I think anything could happen. This is where I could definitely see the Cardinals trading out of this pick. I'm not going to do that because no one knows what type of return the Cardinals would get. No one knows who they would trade it to. No one knows any of that. So I think that with this pick, it is going to be the player who I like more than David Bailey, and that's Arvell Reese. He's absolutely fantastic. He has the versatility to play as more of a linebacker, as well as being an edge rusher. He's fantastic in both ways. Reese, very explosive, very fast, very bendy player. He is someone who I could see excelling at the NFL level, and I think Arizona would be absolutely thrilled to walk away with this draft getting Reese. Now, this is where the draft really starts, because those first three names, realistically, it's going to be between 2 and 3 on which order, but the Titans, there's so many ways you could go. This is where you could see Jeremiah Love go, and he had a visit with the Titans, so who knows? But I could also very well see Carnell Tate going there. And I do think that if I had to pick for this Titans team, I think you saw Tony Pollard play okay. You have Tyjae Spears on that roster. You have an okay running back room. If I were to feel confident about a group, it would be the running back room, and I don't necessarily think that taking a running back fourth overall with this offensive line is what you would want to do. And so I think you want to go and help out your young franchise quarterback, and that's Carnell Tate. Because I know you paid Wan'Dale Robinson in the offseason, but I think that pairing Wan'Dale with Chimere Dike, Alec Ayomanor, and Carnell Tate, that went from a okay room to a okay, we're actually setting Cam Ward up for success. And I always think that one of the most important things you can do with a young quarterback is just take the best players that he can get the ball to, and I think that Carnell Tate is the best player that Cam Ward can get the ball to. So at fifth, well, the Giants. I mean, if they lost to the Raiders when they played and they got the number one pick, we'd be having a much different conversation. But they ended up coming away victorious. And I think looking at this Giants team, you have your quarterback, and you're not going to take a running back here because I think that'd be kind of ridiculous, especially because you saw Cam Skattebo have a pretty productive season, albeit cut short by injuries. And I think that you don't necessarily want to focus on defense here because your defense has been pretty okay. I think you want to focus more on getting a receiver to replace Wando Robinson. I think you could look to go get a pass blocker, like a pass protection. You could look to get a blocker. I think that is definitely in the cards. And I think looking at what you want to do, especially when you saw Jackson Dart kind of get himself into concussion protocol as many times as he did, I think you need to keep him upright, and I think that the best pass blocker and pass protection guy is Francis Mauigoa. He is not as much a he's not as polished as you would like because there are still some flaws in his game, but I do think that if he can shore up on that and hone in his abilities and skills, he would be absolutely fantastic, and that would go miles from where this Giants offensive line was. I do think he'll pair well with Andrew Thomas, especially. I think getting the two tackles set up great. That allows for Dart to do his dancing around in the pocket and do all of that type of snazzy stuff that he likes doing. So I think that getting a franchise tackle, which Mauigoa is, I think that could pay massive dividends for this Giants team. Now for the Browns, I mean, there are so many avenues in which this could go. I mean, the only two position groups that I feel like you don't need to address are running back and tight end. That's it. I think for this Browns team, I could see them going with a receiver because I don't necessarily think you want to have the receiver group that you did. I mean, you don't want Cedric Tillman playing meaningful minutes. So I think that you could very, very well be cool going Makai Lemon with this pick. I think that would be acceptable. I think going Ruben Bain would be acceptable, although I am just a little bit nervous of the lack of arm size, is he one of those players who only works in the college game? But I do think that it is worth that risk taking if that's how you want to approach it. I don't necessarily think that going with a more project-based player is what they need to do at this point. I think that you want to get just a player who you know is going to be decent and solid at this point. And I think that that is Caleb Lomu, the tackle out of Utah, if it'll let me draft him. Okay, it will. But he is someone who he is just fantastic, and this Browns team had a ton of overhaul at the offensive line position, and I think that Lomu, he's a fantastic outside blocker. He's going to be someone that I would want to lean on as a cornerstone to keep Shedeur Sanders upright, and especially with the way that Shedeur plays, he's going to be moving around a lot, and I think Lomu has that strength and that feel for the game that you really like. For the Washington Commanders, do I just go with the oldest rookie or the oldest player here and just roll with it? Because they love having an older team. But in all seriousness, I do think that Washington, with Dan Quinn, is going to go on the defensive side of the ball because I think their offense is pretty good. I mean, you have Bill at running back, so I don't think taking Jeremiah Love here would be the perfect pick. You have your receivers. You have Scary Terry. You have Debo. You're good there. You have a good offensive line. Zach Ertz isn't going to return, but I don't think you take a tight end at number 7. So I think that looking defensively, I think you just go with the best defensive player available, in my opinion. And the best pure football player is Sonny Styles. And what I love about that is he gets to learn from Bobby Wagner. And Sonny Styles, he's absolutely fantastic. If you've watched Ohio State tape, especially, I would have to be on the defensive end, but if you've seen Sonny Styles play, he is an absolute baller, and he's flying all over the football field, and he would be someone that, as an Eagles fan, I would be absolutely terrified for the Commanders to get. Next up is the Saints. Well, one of their big needs is edge, and Ruben Bain is available. I think this is one of those where you just don't overthink it. I think you go with the best football player at a position that you need. Because I don't think you go running back here, especially with how you paid Travis Etienne. And yeah, if you didn't see the presser about him being introduced, you say his name is Etienne, I guess. So that's cool for him. But I think that you already have that running back position filled, so Jeremiah Love wouldn't necessarily be important there. You do have a pretty decent wide receiving group. I do think you do want to draft one more guy to be explosive because you have Chris Olave, and that there alleviates a ton of pressure. You're going to have a good running back. Your offensive line is decent. You have a decent tight end rotation. And I think that with that in mind, I think going defensively is the best here, and Ruben Bain is the best defensive player without serious injury concerns because Caleb Downs, he has some concerns. And I think that Ruben Bain, he's just a fantastic football player. For the Chiefs, if this was 2 months ago, Jeremiah Love easy, no doubt. But they did pay the Super Bowl MVP. So I think that is off the board here. And this Chiefs team, they are very much, I think, back in contention. They have I think their offense is figured out. I could very well see going with Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon here. So I think that would be a really scary pick if they want to go with more of a 2 tight end look. But I think that they're going to kind of stick more on the explosive end of things. And the best explosive option available here is Jordan Tyson. Because if there's one thing that the Chiefs love, that is getting explosive receivers. Because defensively, they're still as good as ever. Well, not as good, but they're still a very good defensive unit with Steve Spagnuolo leading the charge. And I think that if you can get another receiver in there to alleviate some pressure off of Rashee Rice, off of Xavier Worthy, and you can really establish a great 3-headed monster at the receiver position, Patrick Mahomes is going to be loving his life. The Bengals. Do I just say Jeremiah Love? Because this Bengals team doesn't like the defensive side of the ball. I could see that being an option here. And it is very, very tempting to do so. But I do think that it just doesn't make sense at this stage to take a running back. And I think the best corner available is Mansour Delane. He's the most polished corner in this class. He's someone who he has the experience. He's played against the best competition. And he's someone who he could hold himself up very, very well in the absolute gauntlet of the AFC North. And I think that it would make a ton of sense to get a true lockdown corner to really shore up this truly horrific Bengals defense. Oh boy, the Dolphins. I could see them going receiver, which I think if you can get Makai Lemon with this pick, that would be stupendous. But I think that at this point, you're seeing so many great players fall. And you got Caleb Downs on the board. I think it is very, very tempting. But I think Makai Lemon. Because I think that you don't want to put too much strain on Devon Achane and run him into the ground. So if you can get a good receiver there with the added draft capital that you got from the Jalen Waddle trade, you can keep another explosive receiver in the class. That would be superb to help Malik Willis and this new regime. I think that that would be absolutely fantastic for them. I think that if you can get a good receiver, no complaints about that. For the Dallas Cowboys, I think that with this Dallas team whose secondary was just so bad, I think you gotta go with the best player remaining as a safety and explosive player. I think that's Caleb Downs. If there's a team that's going to overlook injury concerns, that's the Dallas Cowboys. And that in terms of Caleb Downs, he's a spectacular football player. He flies to the ball, he's physical, and he's aggressive, and he plays mean. This Dallas team gave up 25 plays of 25-plus yards. This Dallas team got burnt over the top, and with Caleb Downs, that would happen a whole lot less. Looking up next, we have the Rams. And this Rams team, the rich get richer because they were a few plays away from being in the Super Bowl. And I think that this Rams team, you have a need at tackle, and I could very easily see them going that position. I think it's a little bit early to take Ty Simpson, so I don't think that that's the play here. I do think going Monroe Feeling is the best pick here because he's someone who's dealt with competition. He's a absolute anchor on the side of the line of scrimmage, and he is someone who could keep Matt Stafford upright in this really second wind of Rams football. Baltimore. They want to be gritty. They want to be mean. And there aren't many players as mean as Kenyon Sadiq. They love using their tight ends, and I don't blame them, and they got a great one here. To replace Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, you replace them with Kenyon Sadiq, who you know Lamar loves to utilize his tight ends. Kenyon Sadiq, a fantastic playmaker out of Oregon. He's someone who is explosive with the ball in his hands, and to look at the absolute talent that he has, you pair the more speed and faster paced Kenyon Sadiq with the more slower and more fundamental Mark Andrews. That could be spooky for that Ravens team. And I think it's kind of crazy that Jeremiah Love hasn't gone yet, but I don't see the need for any of these teams for him to go. Because I think that the closest one would have been either Dallas or the Bengals. But I don't think that he is a spectacular runner, but I think that there are a lot of needs that teams have, and I just don't think that getting a running back for some of these teams helps them out a lot. So moving on to the Buccaneers, I think that you need to get a linebacker. That is something that you absolutely need to do to replace Lavonte David. You also need to get edge because, let's face it, shoring up the edges, nothing wrong with that. But I think that you have one of the last great corners in this class, and you need to get a player of Jermod McCoy's caliber, because this team, towards the second half of the year, while they dealt with injuries, their defense wasn't as good as you'd like it to be. And Jermod McCoy from Tennessee is someone who absolutely would neutralize the problems with this team. So for the Buccaneers, I love Jermod McCoy to them. I think that he's someone who he's fallen a little bit in my mock, but I just think that he is someone who would work out very, very well for the Buccaneers. For the Jets, we already took, I believe it was David Bailey. Yeah, we took an edge rusher at number 2. Now is where you get into, do you go with Dylan Thieneman? Because this Jets team had 0 interceptions on the year. Do you take the quarterback that you need? Do you take Ty Simpson? Because I don't necessarily think you want Geno Smith and that's it running your team. I don't think that's what you want to do. I think that this Jets team, you got your guy on the pass rush, and I think Ty Simpson, with a year to develop behind Geno Smith, could be a very good football player. So I think that going Ty Simpson, it makes the most sense. I know I'm worried about the receiving core around him outside of Garrett Wilson, but I think that you just have to get a quarterback here, because I think that Ty Simpson is a good quarterback, especially with a year of development, that could be very, very beneficial. I could also see them going receiver here. Do I think the Jets are going to be picking in the top 5 next year? Probably. So I'm going to change my tune a little bit. I'm going to go with the best receiver available, and that's Omar Cooper. He is absolutely physical as all get out. He made a couple of big catches in the national championship game, and he is someone who their next quarterback next year is going to be very integral to their success. The Lions, they need any type of pass rushing or pass blocking and any type of blocking available. And I think the best blocker now is Spencer Fano. He's someone who has very good versatility, able to play both guard and tackle. And I think that doing that with this Lions team, keeping Jared Goff upright, blocking for Jahmyr Gibbs and Isaiah Pacheco, could be very, very important. And I think the fall ends here. I know that you need safety, and Dylan Thieneman's a great safety. But I think he's fallen far enough. Jeremiah Love to the Minnesota Vikings. I know that's far, and I know Jeremiah Love is a fantastic running back prospect. And I think that for this Vikings team, they would be absolutely ecstatic to have him walking in those doors. Jeremiah Love, he's someone who he's a do-it-all back. He's great physically. He's a very physical runner, and he's great at just dropping the shoulder and getting into guys. He's also very elusive and fast and quick and very twitchy, so he's someone who that would be a fantastic fit there in Minnesota with either Kyler Murray or J.J. McCarthy. Up next, the Panthers. They have a need because their defense always just got exposed a little bit. And I think that going with the best safety prospect left on the board in Dylan Thieneman is a great pick for them. Because a safety, he would be someone who would kind of prevent those big plays, allow J.C. Horn to keep neutralizing that side and have Dylan Thieneman as a roamer, which Dylan Thieneman is a fantastic roaming player. He's a hard hitter, physical, fast. He's just a fantastic safety prospect. Up next is the Dallas Cowboys. I already had them taking the best safety prospect in Caleb Downs. I think now is when you want to go more edge rush because you don't have as much of a pass rush presence as you thought you did without Micah Parsons. And it just so happens that there's a great pass rushing prospect here in Kendrick Falk. Falk, he played at Auburn. He was really one of their only bright spots on this team. He was a very productive player in his time at Auburn. This Dallas team needs all the help defensively they can get, and I think that walking away from this class, if you're a Dallas fan, I feel like you have to be a little optimistic about that. The Steelers. My mind tells me they're going to keep doing the 1 year process in mind, which if that's the case, I would just take Ione if that's the case. But I think that you gotta go. I think we're gonna see Aaron Rodgers go back to the Steelers as bad as it would be. I think he would go back. And I think that the Steelers with TJ Watt starting to age, I think you gotta go. And you gotta take Akeem Mesidor, he tallied 12 sacks last year, and he would be scary for the Steelers, and he would be a spooky player. He would be absolutely fantastic there. He's getting to learn from one of the best to do it in the business in TJ Watt, and that would just be spooky. Chargers, they need a guard, and it just so happens that Ione is here. I think this is a case of just not overthinking it. The Chargers, they need to keep Justin Herbert upright. Who better than the guard out of Penn State, Ione? The Eagles. Does it come with a good offensive coordinator at this pick? Realistically, I think that with this team, you're seeing defensively, they're as good as ever. I don't expect that to change. Offensively, I could look to have them go with a tackle because with Jordan Mailata being a little bit more injury prone and him getting up there in age, coming close to the 30 mark, with Lane Johnson being a year-to-year thing, who knows when he starts to fall off. I do think Fred Johnson's played well in replacement, but I do think that you got to go with one of the best explosive players. And, I mean, it just comes down to who do you want receiver-wise. I really like Denzel Boston as a receiver. I know that Casey Concepcion is here, but I do think that someone who's a more physical blocking receiver, I think that Denzel Boston is that player. He's someone who's very similar to A.J. Brown in a lot of regards, and I think that the Eagles, they need to get another receiver because it looks like A.J. Brown's days in Philadelphia are numbered. The Browns, I already had them taking tackle, right? Yeah, I had them taking Caleb Lomu. Now is when you go and you take a receiver. Case of Concepcion, he's on the board. Cool. Pretty simple. Conception's a big play receiver. You do worry about his consistency a little bit, but if you can get weapons around Shedeur Sanders and keep him upright, it's a win-win on all fronts. For the Chicago Bears, I think that with the success you saw on offense last year, you don't want to change it a whole lot. Defensively, you have a good edge rusher, you have a good secondary, and you have good corners. You do worry about up front where you didn't get the exact level of production that you wanted from Grady Jarrett. So I think you go with Peter Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. He's just an absolute stuffer, and with all of the assets that the Bears have in terms of pass rushers, he would fit in just swimmingly for this Bears team. For the Buffalo Bills. Oh, I forgot. They don't need a receiver as much anymore. You finally got a receiver, Bills. Yeah. But on a more serious note, I think that you want to go and get the best players. You do need interior pass rush. You do need to get any semblance of a pass rush. And the best pure pass rusher available is going to be Caden McDonald, although this Bills team, McDonald would more so be used as a just run stopper because this Bills team was horrible against the run and they were just getting gashed. That's why Denver looked as productive as they did against them in the playoffs. But I do think that getting Caden McDonald, great player, right? He fills the need on the interior defensive line. Great pick for them. They have their receiver issues figured out. Could this be the year for the Buffalo Bills? Only time will tell. For the 49ers, there is no new medical team. All right. So actually having to pick. Well, Caden Proctor, very, very explosive, very versatile player where I think he would end up being a better guard than he would tackle. But I do think that if you want to get a younger tackle, having him learn from Trent Williams would be a fantastic move. So I think that it's pretty simple and pretty easy on how that would go. I think that with this 49ers team, they have a ton of issues, right? Mostly with staying healthy. But looking at it, they have their key cogs set. And I think getting another blocker would absolutely help. Someone who he could play both the guards and he could play the tackles, and I think he would do so very, very comfortably. The Texans, literally any pass blocker possible. I do think that with this, you need to go more upside based. And I think that's Max Iheanacho. He's new to the sport of football, but he's someone who he could be an absolutely fantastic blocker, and that's what you need. And I think that you don't have to play him immediately, but I think that just getting someone who could be a standout tackle for CJ Stroud would be absolutely instrumental in getting the Texans where they want to go. For the Chiefs, you already got your big play guy. Now I think is where you have to go with not as flashy of a pick, and I think that is Blake Miller. Miller, very solid, very consistent, very good. he will absolutely thrive in Kansas City. He gets to play on a pretty good offensive line who will probably play right tackle to replace Juwan Taylor. But I could very easily see this being a great pairing on the offensive line and just see the success flow in for this Chiefs team. Next up, the Dolphins. Once again, I think just going with because I already took a receiver there. I think going with the secondary player is important, and Colton Hood is on the board. Hood, very productive. He played in the toughest conference in football. Yes, the SEC is the toughest conference in football, but Colton Hood, stand out. And when you look at all of the issues that this Dolphins team has, I think just getting a consistently good player in Colton Hood is the way that you want to go. And I see no issues with just making that pick. The Patriots, I think getting any blocker you can is as important as anything. I think that you want to get someone who is more versatile, and I think that getting someone in the case of Chase Besantis might be the pick here. I know that it's a little bit of a reach, but I do think that getting more of a guard, being more of an interior presence to help out Will Campbell, although I don't know if they want to put Will Campbell at guard. It seems to be that they, or at least inclination that I have, and that seems to be vocalized, is that they want to keep him at tackle, which if that's the case, I think then you go with a guard, and I think Chase Besantis is the best guard on the board, because you saw Drake May get absolutely battered in the Super Bowl, and you just need to take the best guard available. Literally the only big loss that this Seahawks team had was running back. That's it. Otherwise, they pretty much returned most of their players. They don't have anyone really leaving that's a big concern. I think that it is a little bit high to draft Jadarian Price. But when you look at, he was a very productive player. Very productive. And that's when he had to share the backfield with Jeremiah Love. And to get 700 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns on only 100 carries is something that he's versatile. He's a lot more of a receiving back, which could help Sam Darnold out of the backfield with just checking down passes. I think that going and getting and fixing something that is a problem, I guess, whether or not you want to lean into Zach Charbonnet, but I do think that getting someone who would complement him very well, absolutely important. Defensively, you're going to maintain that. Offensively, you retained your pieces there. So it really comes down to, can you execute when it matters most and run it back? I do think that Jadarian Price is the pick here. Well, this is my second NFL mock draft. Let me know in the comments down below whether or not you agree or disagree with my picks, and of course, tell me why you feel that way. That is all on this doozy of a video. This is The Scoop with Coop, and until next time, so long, everybody.